Hello again. I've got another study in the series Israel, the Church and the Kingdom of God. We're up to study 46. And we started on a mini-series in the whole series of maybe 60, 70 studies of the feasts of God. God starts a new calendar the day that the children of Israel were delivered from Egypt. He started a brand new calendar. I believe it started a timeline that will finish in eternity. The day he delivered Israel, he said this month shall be unto you the beginning of months. So it started a year's calendar. So I don't know what the calendar was before, but it must have been different because he said this month is the beginning of the year. The beginning of months shall be the first month of the year to you. So he started a separate calendar. Why would God do that if there was already months and years and days? I'd never considered that till I studied it, but it's significant because God was starting a new timeline. The timeline from Adam till the Exodus was whatever it was, and we don't know that, do we? So this is how the plan worked out. This month is the first month, and God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons, and for days and for years. So God had already set the cycle of days and years and times and seasons, but he started a new timeline after the Exodus. And it was a lunar calendar. I don't know what it was before. I've no indication that it was anything. But he said the new moon will start the month. And the full moon will be the beginning of the month, so it's a cycle. So the 1st and the 15th month are pivotal. The new moon starts the month. The 15th of the month is the middle of the month. So when it gets to 30 days, then we start a new month, the new moon. So it wasn't a fixed thing. It was when the new moon was. It wasn't a clock, was it? You know, so many hours. It was when the moon first appeared. That was the month. And I believe it's a timeline of Israel. Timeline of Israel. Because when he called Israel out of Egypt, he said, this is the first month to you. So it's nothing to do with the Gentiles. They carried on with their own calendar, didn't they? Like we've got different calendars now. I used to grow up thinking that everybody had the same calendar. But I realised, you know, to us it's 2026, but the Ethiopian calendar, it's completely different. And they have different months in the year. They divide the year up differently. The Chinese, their new year is different than ours. So everyone has their own calendar. But God wanted to separate people. So this is a calendar for Israel, not the Gentiles. I know we're grafted on, but it was essentially a different calendar than all the other nations of the world. And he said there'll be certain feasts pivotal in every year. And the plan won't end till the heaven and earth pass away. Well, let's get into it. God told them to set aside 3 times in the year. I know there were other times, but 3 pivotal times. The 1st month, the 3rd month, and the 7th month. Exodus 23:14-16. 3 times shall thou keep a feast unto me in the year. So that's plain statement. We don't have to debate that, do we? 3 times in the year you shall keep feasts unto me. And he names the feast. Thou shalt keep the feast of unleavened bread. Thou shalt eat unleavened bread 7 days. So it's a 7-day feast. The most of the feast was 7 days. Except the tabernacles, and that's got 8 days, the last great day. We'll get into that. As I commanded thee in the time appointed in the month Abib. I need to say that God didn't name the months. These are Persian names, Nisan and Abib. They're occult names. Nissan is the name of a Persian god. So the Jewish names of the months are not from God. God didn't use names, he used numbers. On the 2nd day of the 3rd month, on the 7th day of the 16th month, and so on. And the Bible reference on the 13th year, on the 2nd month, on the 13th day of the month, it never said on Wednesday or Thursday. It's universal numbers. It doesn't matter what the name is, does it? If a culture changes the name, it's the 3rd day. If you call the 3rd day Wednesday or Michaelmas Day, it doesn't matter what the day is. If you have the number, it's consistent throughout history. So I believe that's why God gave them numbers. And the Feast of the Harvest, the first fruits of thy labour which thou hast sown in the field, and the field of a gathering, which is the end of the year. This is the 7th month, when thou hast gathered in thy labours out of the field. So this is the Feast of Tabernacles. And God calls the second feast the Feast of Weeks. Deuteronomy 16:16. 3 times in a year shall all the males appear before the Lord thy God in the place which he shall choose. In Exodus, they didn't even know where they should keep the feast. God had hidden it. Nobody knew till David took Jerusalem. Samuel didn't know where they should hold the feast. He had the feast at Shiloh, didn't he? Or the tabernacle. But he prophesied in Deuteronomy, in the place which he shall choose, in the Feast of Unleavened Bread and in the Feast of Weeks. So he calls the second feast the Feast of Weeks. And he calls the last feast the Feast of Tabernacles, and the Feast of Tabernacles, and they shall not appear before the Lord empty. So everyone had to go to the place that God would choose. You couldn't celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles in your local community. You had to go to Jerusalem. So Messianic Jews think they keep the Feast of Tabernacles, but you can't keep it unless you go to Jerusalem, because they had to appear in the place that God would choose. And we know on high set that God chose Jerusalem. Well, I believe this timeline can be divided to 7 feasts, because in the Feast of Weeks there's different days, isn't it? In the Feast of Weeks there's the 10th day, the 14th day, the 15th day, and then there's another period of weeks where they had to take leaven out of the house. So there's different. The Feast of Weeks is different than the Feast of Passover, but they're all in the one string of days. So this is what I see it. Number 1, the Feast of Passover, that's in the 1st month. Number 2, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, that's in the 1st month. Number 3, the Feast of First Fruits, that's Pentecost, that's in the 3rd month, because it's Penti is 5, isn't it? So 50 days over after the Passover was the Feast of Pentecost. So it was all governed on the new moons. When they got the new moon, that started the 1st month. And on the 3rd month, there was the Feast of Pentecost, 50 days after Passover. But Passover was depending on the new moon of the year. And they all followed in. The Feast of Trumpets. Number 5, the Day of Atonement. There's the Feast of Trumpets on the 1st day. We'll look at them in detail in the next dozen. But the Feast of Trumpets was on the 1st day of the month. And the Day of Atonement was at the 10th day of the month. And the Feast of the Tabernacles was 7 days. And the 7th one is the last great day. Jesus stood on that great day of the feast. That's the 8th day. It's the only feast with 8 days, the Feast of Tabernacles. Every other is 7, which is complete, isn't it? God made the earth in 7 days. So that's my 7th feast. But the 8th day starts eternity. God's worked with the earth 6,000 years, and he'll rest on the 7,000 years. That's the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is 1,000 years. And then we start the 8th day, which is the beginning of a new period. The timeline's finished, so we start eternity, the last great day. And Jesus stood up on the great day of the feast, the last day of the feast after Tabernacles, and he said, come, out of your belly will flow rivers of living water. I think that's eternal life, rivers of living water. Okay, so what do the feasts prophesy? Can we know when the events will happen? I think yes. So the first month is the 14th day is the Passover. The 10th day they choose the lamb, but the 14th day they kill the lamb, that's the Passover. Well, Jesus died exactly on Passover, didn't he? As they were killing the lamb, Jesus was died. The 15th to the 21st is the Feast of Unleavened Bread. In the third month, 7 weeks from the start of the harvest, 50 days after the Passover, is the Feast of Pentecost. Well, we know that Jesus came and died on the Feast of Passover, and we know that the Holy Ghost came on the Feast of Pentecost. The Feast of Trumpets, don't forget Jesus comes at the last trump, so it's not by chance that he calls it the Feast of Trumpets. On the 10th day is the Day of Atonement. Most Christians don't know the difference between the Day of Atonement and the Passover. They say Jesus was the atonement goat. He wasn't, he was a Passover lamb. The Bible never says Jesus was the atonement goat, only in Hebrews. And that's to the Hebrews, to the Jews, because they understood the Day of Atonement. But to Gentiles, the Day of Atonement means nothing to us. He's our Passover lamb for the whole world. Jesus, our Passover lamb, was sacrificed for us, Paul said. So the Passover lamb is for the Gentiles and the Jews who accept Jesus. So that's Jesus was the Passover lamb. But for the nation of Israel who rejected Jesus, they have the Day of Atonement. I won't get into it now, but the Day of Atonement was the day when Israel were forgiven once a year and their sins were blotted out, and the priest officiated it. It's completely different, and we mix the two up and think they're the same feast, but they're separated by months. And so the 15th to the 21st is the Feast of Tabernacles, and that's the last and great harvest, the gathering. And then the 22nd, the last and great day. I believe that's a new heaven and a new earth. So the Feast of Trumpets, to herald in the end of God's plan. Trumpets are always a warning. The 7 trumpets are a warning. Israel were told to have silver trumpets to warn the people to battle and to rally the troops. So trumpets are a warning. They're in the army. The bugle, the trumpet, it's to call people to war and advance. They use a trumpet because it's louder than a man shouting. The last post, it's always a trumpet, isn't it? So it's a herald in God's end time plan. And the Day of Atonement, it's Israel Day, nothing to do with us Gentiles. I'll prove it to you, I hope. And the Feast of Tabernacles, the last and great harvest, there's the first fruits, and then the gathering in. It's in our October when we gather in, and it's the 7th month to us, to Israel, the 10th month to us, and the 22nd, the last great day of the feast. So that's got to be fulfilled. Don't forget, God's a God of love and relationship, not religion. It wasn't instituted as a religious duty. They had to do it, but God said, remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. It was a separate day. It's God's timeline. It's God's day. The Sabbath is not our day. It's God's day. Keep my Sabbaths. We think it's our day of rest, but it's God's day of rest. And he says, you keep my day of rest. But consistently through the Bible, it says, keep my Sabbath, or you've not kept my Sabbath. And the feast showed God's passion and zeal. You know, I love my God because only God has the power to bring world events to coincide with his feast. Let me say that again. Only God has the power to organise world events to coincide with his timeline. Only God, politicians can't coincide God's plan with the timeline, but only God can do it. So it's awesome to be part of God's plan, to be grafted on the vine and the olive tree that God nurtured over the centuries. So we're grafted on, the Gentiles are grafted onto the olive tree, which is Israel. This is a timeline of Israel, and we're grafted on. So we're part of this timeline now, aren't we? So it's a wonderful thing, because we've been grafted on, so it applies to us. So all the chastisements of God and the mysterious ways of God will be understood when the plan's finished. We don't understand the plan now, do we? We see through a glass darkly. But all the chastisements of Israel and our chastisements and the church's chastisement and the mysterious ways of God will be understood when the plan is finished, and the family of God will be complete on the new earth. So love wins in the end. Love wins the day, doesn't it? Why? Because God is love. He's the greatest lover in the universe, and everything is motivated by love. Even the lake of fire is to show God's love, if you can understand it. Maybe many of you can't understand it, but if God is love, then it's a plan of love. At the end, we'll all say, wow, what a wonderful plan. Because God loved his order. God so loved the world. That's not people. The world is cosmos. God so loved his plan, his order. God so loved the plan that when it appeared to fail, he sent his son to redeem us. It's a wonderful plan. It seems outrageous to say the lake of fire is because of God's love, but if God is love and that's his motive, then everything is because of God's love. And Revelation, for me, confirms this. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honour and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. Well, the devil never created anything, did he? Can you tell me what the devil created? Only chaos. He can't create anything, can he? So he didn't create the lake of fire, did he? Christians seem to think that the devil created the lake of fire. God created all things. He created vessels of honour and vessels of dishonour. He created vessels of honour and vessels fit for destruction. So God sends people to the lake of fire, not the devil, because they resisted God and they didn't obey God. So that's God's punishment. It's nothing to do with the devil's punishment. The devil's going to end up in the lake of fire. So he can't have created it, can he, if he's going to end up there and be tormented? Can you see that everything God created is for this wonderful purpose of love? And you'll need to ask God to give you understanding of that. I understand it. I've understood it for years, but if it gives you a problem, ask God to reveal it to you. So we can't talk about God's feast without mentioning the Sabbath, because the first day of the feast was a Sabbath, a holy day. God called both the first and the last day a Sabbath day. But they're the feast Sabbaths. That's different than the weekly Sabbaths. That was in the week, so it's a holy convocation, a holy day. You set it aside. But the weekly Sabbath is nothing to do with the feast, is it? When I have a Sabbath, it's not to do with God's timeline. It's not to do with the feast. So the weekly Sabbaths I'm going to talk about, it's to remember God's plan of 6 work and 1 day rest. And it's not a religious day. It's not a holy day in that sense. When I say holy, it is a separate day, but it's not a religious day. The feasts are religious. They had ritualistically do them, didn't they? The feast, they couldn't get out of them. They had to do them. But the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. So it's different. Genesis 2 and 3. It's to do with God, the Sabbath, not us, not religion. And on the 7th day, God ended his work which he had made. So God's a worker, isn't he? And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. So God rested, not because he was tired. Have you ever thought why God rested? It worked, but he can work for 1,000,000 years non-stop. He won't get tired. He never slumbers. He doesn't need sleep. So why did he rest if he wasn't tired? I think I've got the answer: to appraise his work. Every day, at the end of the day, he said, he appraised his work, and he said, and God saw that it was good. And on the sixth day, when he'd finished the work, he says, it's very good. It's very good what I've created. So he's rested from all his labours to appraise his work. And that's one reason we need a Sabbath. I'm not talking about a legalistic day, Sunday or Saturday, depending on how you see it, but I'm talking about work 6 days, rest 1. Because the week is 7 days, so you need to rest 1 day a week. Paul clearly says, one man esteems one day greater, one man esteems another. But you need a rest. So I'm not being legalistic, saying we have to keep Sunday as a holy day or Saturday as a holy day. Now we're free from the law of Moses. The Gentiles who were grafted on, we don't keep the law of Moses, do we? The ordinances and days, we keep the moral law of God, but we don't keep the ordinance. He said they were nailed to the tree. The law was nailed to the tree, contained in ordinance. So the dietary laws, the feasts, they're all ordinances. They're not moral issues, are they? So every moral issue from the law of Moses we keep, but every ordinance we're freed from. Paul clearly teaches that. I can't go into it now. So Adam was supposed to work in the garden. No sweat. He said, dress the garden. He wasn't supposed to work and sweat and need a rest. He rested to appraise his work. I've dressed that tree good. I've planted this here. The curse on Adam was he'd work with the sweat of his brow. That implies that previously he didn't work by the sweat of his brow. He's worked like God works, and he's dressed the garden. There was no pressure. You've got to get that job done in a week or you'll get fired. That's pressure. You work by the sweat of your brow. You till the ground. Adam didn't need to till the ground. He could pick the fruit off the trees. There were no weeds. The herbs and that were all plentiful, so he didn't have to work. He arranged the garden. God says you'll work by the sweat of your brow. You'll eat bread. So bread is worked grain. Why didn't they eat the grain? It's worked grain, isn't it? The wine is worked grapes. The bread is laboured wheat. You thrash it and you harvest it. And wine, you have to tread the grapes. Why not just eat grapes? But it's sweat work. Sabbath prophesies that the curse is lifted on the seventh day. I believe the seventh day is the millennium. Because God's worked 6,000 years, he'll rest for 1,000 years. And so the Sabbath prophesies that the curse is lifted on the seventh day. In the millennium, the lion will eat straw like the ox. And the child will play on the hole of an asp, and it won't bite them. So this is a restoration of the creation, isn't it? And the Sabbath lets you know that there's a rest for the people of God. Paul said, there remaineth. The rest was Canaan to Israel, but he said, still remaineth a day of rest for the people of God. He's talking about the future, not the past. And the millennium is the day of rest for the people of God. So the curse will be lifted on the seventh day. It's finished. Romans 8, 19 to 23 talks about this. For the earnest expectation of the creature. Well, the creature includes people, but animals and birds and fish, the creatures. For the earnest expectation of the creature waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. We manifest when we're born again. We're born of the Spirit. We've got a spiritual body. I'm born of the flesh, so I'm flesh. If I'm born of the Spirit, I must be spirit. I'm saved, but I'm not born again till the resurrection, till I get the new body. But the whole creation's waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, because the animals didn't sin, the cows didn't sin, the budgerigar didn't sin, the fish didn't sin, the birds didn't sin. So they've been subject to the curse in vanity, worthless really, not willingly, but reason of whom hath subjected the same in hope. So the animal kingdom has a hope of the resurrection. I believe the cat and the dog and the budgie have more hope of the resurrection than most Christians, because it says it's subject to them in hope. They have a hope. One day we'll be liberated. I won't have to kill to eat. The fox can lay with the chicken. The lion can lay with the lamb. They wanted to be free from it. It's an instinct to kill. They can't help it. They've been subject, but it's their instinct to kill, that they're longing to be freed from that. Why would a cat want to kill a bird? Why not play with it? But it's God subjected them the same to kill, but they're waiting for the hope of resurrection. Because the creature itself shall also be delivered from the bondage of corruption. So it's not only people, the whole animal kingdom will be delivered from the bondage of corruption unto the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know, most Christians don't, but Paul assumes we do, for we know the whole creation groans and travaileth, so the trees and the mountains are groaning, the whole creation's groaning and travailing. That travail is labour, isn't it? Waiting to birth. A woman travails in labour, in pain together until now. You know, when it says the trees will clap their hands and the mountains will skip, it's more than just a poetic license. It's more than just an allegory, isn't it? The trees will clap their hands, the mountains will skip, because they're freed from the curse. The whole creation's groaning. That says the whole creation, so that includes the sea and the mountains and the trees and the birds and the animals. The whole creation's groaning and travailing, waiting to be for this manifestation of the sons of God. And not only they, but ourselves also. Most Christians aren't travailing and longing for the resurrection from the dead, where they get a spiritual body, are they? Which have the first fruits of the Spirit. Most Christians have the first fruits of the Spirit, and they want to stay on this earth, and God bless them on this earth. They're not waiting for the new body. Even we ourselves grow within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, that is, to wit, the redemption of our body. So my spirit's redeemed, but my body certainly isn't. I'm getting old, I've got hearing aids and glasses, and I won't tell you what else, but I'm longing to be freed. As you get older, you more and more long to be freed. When you're young, you want to stay young forever, but when you get old, you realise you're decaying, and you look forward to getting the new body, the redemption of our body. So salvation's not complete, is it? My spirit is redeemed, that's for sure, I'm saved, but my body's waiting to be redeemed. So, let me read Hebrews 4, 1-11. I believe Canaan is a shadow of the millennium. I don't believe Canaan, when you cross Jordan into Canaan's land, and Negro spirituals say that's, heaven. Cross Jordan and we'll get into heaven. I don't believe that. I think Jordan is going across with Joshua, who's Jesus, into the promised land. That's the millennium, the reign of peace, where they will rule the nations with a rod of iron. They defeat the nations in Canaan, didn't they? How can it be heaven? There's giants there. It's not a type of heaven. It can't be. There were giants to overcome, an inheritance to be gained. So, Hebrews 1, let us therefore fear lest a promise being left us of entering into his rest, any of you should seem to come short of it. This is the millennium, the rest for the people of God. For unto us was the gospel preached, as well as unto them. So as well as to the Jews, it's preached to the Gentiles. But the word preached did not profit them, not being mixed with faith in them that heard it. Israel failed, didn't they, because they didn't have faith. For we which have believed do enter into rest, as it said, as I have sworn in my wrath, if they shall enter into my rest, although the works were finished from the foundation of the world. God already planned the works, but we've got to enter into the rest. And in this place again, if they shall enter into my rest. Seeing therefore it remaineth that some must enter therein, and they to whom it was first preached entered not in because of unbelief. So they didn't enter the rest because of unbelief. The whole nation of Israel perished in the wilderness. The next generation went in, but they failed. So, verse 7, again he limited on a certain day, saying to David, today, after so long a time, as it is said, today, if you will hear his voice, harden not your hearts. For if Jesus had given them rest, then would they not afterwards have spoken of another day? So Jesus didn't bring rest, did he? The first time he came. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. Paul's talking about the future because Paul was after Jesus, and he said Jesus didn't bring them into the rest the first time he came. There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God. So our Joshua's got to come, not Moses. Joshua takes us into the promised land, whoever Joshua is, not literally Joshua. For he that is entered into his rest, he is also ceased from his own works, as God did from his. There's no work in the millennium. We've finished the work. Let us labour, therefore, to enter into that rest. Labour, so you can enter into... Work 6 days, well you can. The night's coming when no man can work. Work while it's day. Therefore labour to work to enter into the rest, lest any man fall after the same example of unbelief. So Israel are a shadow of failure. God said, go and claim the land, and they refused because they didn't have faith. We've got to take it by faith, haven't we? Psalm 95, 10 and 11. This is God speaking to Israel. 40 years long was I grieved with this generation, and said, it is a people that do err in their hearts. They have not known my ways. Unto whom I swear in my wrath, they shall not enter unto my rest. So God says, you've grieved me 40 years in the wilderness, and you will not have my rest. So Paul said that if they didn't enter the rest, then there's a future rest for the people of God, and that's the millennium. Let me talk about the Sabbath. I remember when businesses and shops stopped work on Sunday. Maybe the future generation don't know, but when I was born, 1945, it was quiet on a Sunday. It was different than any other day. You could walk down the road, there wasn't cars then, but everywhere was quiet. You heard the church bells ringing, and it was a day of rest. People didn't go to the shops and buy newspapers. They didn't go shopping. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just saying the church and the government set one day to rest, and the church and state put Sunday as a holy day. For 1500 years, I know it was the Catholic Church who instituted Sunday as the day of worship. They changed God's day as Saturday. But I'm not debating whether it's Sunday or Saturday. I'm debating one day to rest. We could argue that later. But you need one day of rest. So were Christians wrong or legalistic to do it? Maybe they had the wrong day. Maybe they should have set Saturday as God's day and not Sunday, the Catholic day. But it doesn't matter. It was good that they set one day aside. That's my point. So have the modern church new revelation on this special day? Modern Christians don't seem to keep the Sabbath. They go to church in the morning and go 10-minute bowling later. They don't set aside a day to rest. It's a day of activity. And some people, especially ministers, they're shattered after the Sunday because they officiate in the church in the morning, then they have a night meeting and they go home shattered. That's not a day of rest. But Sunday is supposed to be a day of rest for Christians, but they don't have a day of rest. It's not a religious day. I won't go into it, but the Sabbath, when God instituted it to Israel, it wasn't a religious day. He didn't say pray on the Sabbath. He didn't say read the law of Moses on the Sabbath. He didn't say go to the tabernacle on the Sabbath. He said it's a day to rest from all your labours as God rested from him. So it's not a religious day. It's a day to rest from your labours. It's a day to spend time with your wife and your family and relax. And your health will suffer and your stress level will go up if you don't be disciplined and have a day of rest. I'm strong on that because that's God's order. God made man before sin to work 6 days and rest on the seventh because that was God's creation. So before man sinned, God worked 6 days and rested on the seventh, setting the principle for creation. Even the trees, they stop bearing fruit 1 year, don't they, to replenish themselves. He said, leave your field in fallow every 7 years so that the ground can replace itself. So even the creation needs a rest. It's part of God's order. It's not to do with legalism. The Sunday institution was by the Catholic Church at the Council of Laodicea in Asia Minor, the 4th century, not by mandate from the apostles. But I'm not talking about that. I'm saying we need 1 day of rest. And in the book, maybe I'll advertise the book. I've written 7 volumes. This is volume 7. Israel, the Church, the Kingdom of God. This is the last volume. And the subtitle is The History and Future of God's People. That includes the patriarchs, Israel, the church, and to the end of the world. God's plan, in other words. I've written another series, 6,000 Years of Babylon, showing the counterfeit church's plan. But you need to read the 2 volumes in parallel, really. In the book, I think I've given a quote where the Catholic Church acknowledged that they changed God's day from Saturday to Sunday. And it's in the Catechism. They say, what day is God's day? And the answer is God's day is Saturday. This is Catholic Catechism. Why do Catholics keep Sunday? Because the Pope decided he can abrogate and change the law of God. They acknowledge they change God's laws. And they say, Christians call us the whore of Babylon, but they honour our day, Sunday. Why don't they keep Saturday, God's day? They keep the Catholic day. But that's another study. And the Gregorian calendar, the calendar we have now, was started by the order of the Catholic Pope, Pope Gregory, the Gregorian calendar. And the other one was Julian calendar by Julius Caesar. He's a type of Antichrist, isn't he? So whether Saturday or Sunday is the Lord's day has no bearing on the fact that a day should be set aside. That's what I want to major on in this study. I've talked about the feast, but I'm going to have a whole 40 minutes on the Passover, a whole 40 minutes on the tabernacles and the feast. So there's a few studies. I've just given a rough timeline of the feast, but this is the only time I'll talk about the weekly Sabbath, and I think it's important. We're now free to serve in spirit and truth, and creation shows that rest day is an important day. One sign of the last days is that the pace of life would increase. We work 7 days now, don't we? England don't have a day of rest. People work shift work. They work day and night, which is wrong. That's not God's order. It's to do with money, isn't it? Keep the factory open. So You're meant to sleep in the night, not work in the night. I know doctors and nurses, that's separate, but manual work, you're supposed to work in the day and rest at night. We've changed God's order. But the pace of life has so speeded up that factories run 7 days a week. Shops are all, Asda's open 7 days a week, resulting in stress-related man-induced illnesses that could easily be avoided if we rest. People are tense because they work 7 days a week, and on the weekend, they have 2 days off work, but they're stressed out, they're running around and stressed. They don't relax on those 2 days. Well, fighting God's order, because I'm maintaining the Sabbath, 1 in 7 days rest, is God's order. So fighting God's order and disobeying it causes stress and physical consequences. Don't be so busy. Let me warn you, don't be so busy that you have no time to rest. John Wesley said an interesting thing. He says, I've got so much to do today. If I don't spend an hour with God, I'll never get it done. He had so much to do. He had 12 hours work to do. But he said, if I discipline myself, if I spend time with God, I'll get it done quicker and more efficiently than if I didn't spend time with God. So spending time and relaxing doesn't hinder the workflow. It doesn't make you less productive. In fact, it makes you more productive because you start the new week fresh after you've had a rest. Like sleep is a rest, isn't it? You wake up refreshed to start another day. If you work 24/7, you'll have a nervous breakdown. You'll have a wobbler, as I say. So it's interesting that God speaks in a still small voice. He doesn't speak in the storm, does he? Elijah heard the thunder, but God wasn't in it. He heard the earthquake, and God wasn't in it. In the stillness, God speaks, walk this way. This is the way, walk in it. You know, when you're busy, you have no time to listen to God. You get your information from the TV off TV preachers, because you've no time to spend time with God and meditate and leave yourself open for God to give you thoughts. You get your thoughts from the TV. That's not resting. That's not stillness and quietness, is it? I could say much more, but I'll finish now. The next study will be about the Passover, and then the next study will be the Pentecost and the Tabernacles. I'll go through it. So have a wonderful week. God bless you. See you for the next study.